You think you know horror? Hey, you haven't seen what those humans can do. I hate interviews, especially ones about the war. But here I am, sitting in this plush studio while some fresh-faced reporter with too many appendages and not enough life experience prods at my trauma like it's entertainment. The name's Vorex Taser, former combat specialist, 7th Galactic Fleet. Now, just another veteran trying to forget what happened on that miserable blue planet. But the Federation wants its propaganda, and apparently my unique perspective makes for good ratings. Commander Taser, the reporter, Nexla, Noxa, something like that, leans forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It's been 5 cycles since the Earth conflict ended. Why speak out now? I adjust my prosthetic limb, the mechanical clicking echoing in the quiet studio. Because you idiots are already forgetting. Already rewriting history to make yourselves feel better about what happened, about what we did. Her facial membranes flutter nervously. Could you elaborate on what you mean by what we did? We underestimated them. Catastrophically. I lean back, feeling the weight of memories pressing down. We called them primitive. Our intelligence suggested they were centuries behind us technologically. Barely spacefaring. Easy conquest. But they weren't, she prompts, antenna twitching with excitement, vultures, these media types. No, they weren't. I close my eyes, and suddenly I'm back there, the smoky battlefield of what the humans called Montana. The screams of my squad mates. The horrifying realization that we'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. First contact was textbook. We detected their primitive radio signals, observed their quaint little space missions, and concluded they were ripe for integration into the Galactic Federation. Integration being our polite term for conquest and resource extraction, of course. Admiral Zolan Bricks, that pompous windbag, led the invasion fleet. I remember his speech before deployment. Fellow warriors of the Federation, today we bring civilization to a backward world. Their resources will fuel our expansion. Their people will serve our needs. And their resistance, if any, will be brief and futile. We all cheered. Gods, we were so confident. I commanded Strike Team Epsilon. 50 of the Federation's finest warriors, equipped with plasma rifles, gravity manipulators, and battle armor that could withstand most conventional weapons. Our dropship screamed through Earth's atmosphere on the first day of the invasion. Target, a military installation near a place called Great Falls. Remember your training, I told my team as we prepared to land. These humans are physically weaker than us, with primitive projectile weapons and limited tactical capabilities. Standard intimidation protocols should minimize casualties on both sides. Grek, my second in command, laughed. Why bother minimizing their casualties? They're just humans. I shot him a glare. Because dead slaves don't work mines. The dropship touched down with a thud. Hydraulics hissed as the bay doors opened, revealing the Montana landscape, flat grassy terrain with mountains in the distance. Perfect for our first demonstration of superior firepower. Defensive formation beta. Move out, I ordered, and my troops poured from the ship in perfect synchronization, weapons ready. The human military base looked pathetic. Concrete structures, metal fences, a handful of wheeled vehicles. We expected immediate surrender once they saw our technology. Instead, they opened fire. The first volley of human bullets pinged harmlessly off our armor. My troops laughed, the sound echoing through our comm systems. Return fire. Non-lethal protocols, I commanded. Plasma bolts streaked across the field, hitting the concrete barriers where humans had taken cover. We advanced confidently, our gravity manipulators allowing us to leap great distances, flanking their positions with ease. Then, something strange happened. The humans retreated. They're running already, GRE sneered. Pathetic. But Lieutenant Pax, our tactical analyst, seemed concerned. Sir, this doesn't match their predicted behavior patterns. Our intelligence suggested human soldiers would defend fixed positions to the death. They're adapting to our superior tactics, I replied dismissively. Continue advance. We pushed forward into the base, meeting minimal resistance. Buildings stood empty. Equipment abandoned. It felt wrong. Sir, Pax called out, scanning with her multispectrum visor. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures beneath us. Before I could respond, the ground erupted. The explosion threw me 20 feet into the air. When I crashed back down, chaos surrounded me. Half my squad lay broken and screaming. The primitive humans had tunneled beneath their own base, and rigged it with explosives. Sacrificing their infrastructure to damage our forces. Ambush. Defensive positions. I shouted, struggling to my feet. From the tree line at the perimeter, human soldiers emerged, firing weapons that weren't in our intelligence reports. Not the primitive projectile rifles we'd expected, but something new. Gauss rifles that fired metal slugs at velocities our armor wasn't designed to withstand. Trooper Kell's head exploded next to me, blue blood splattering my visor. 3 more of my soldiers fell before we could react. Return fire. Full combat protocols. I screamed into the comm. What followed was not the easy victory we'd anticipated, but a brutal firefight. The humans moved with unexpected discipline, using cover effectively, coordinating their attacks with hand signals and short-range communications our jammers couldn't block. We still had technological superiority. Our plasma weapons cut through their body armor. Our gravity manipulators allowed us to make impossible leaps and bounds. But, they had numbers. And more importantly, home field advantage. And they fought with a ferocity we hadn't anticipated. Fall back to the dropship. I finally ordered, watching our casualty count rise to unacceptable levels. Of my 50 elite troops, only 37 remained combat effective. As we retreated, the humans pressed their advantage, not with reckless charges, but with methodical, tactical pursuit. They herded us, I realized too late, maneuvered us away from our extraction point. When we finally reached the dropship, we found it surrounded. Human armored vehicles. Tanks, they called them. Primitive by our standards, but their main guns were aimed directly at our only means of escape. Hold position, I ordered, assessing the situation. We were pinned down, but our armor could still withstand their conventional weapons. Or so I thought. The first tank fired, and instead of the standard explosive round we'd expected, something else hit our dropship. Something that burned with a white-hot intensity that melted through the hull like it was paper. What was that? Gre shouted, panic evident in his voice for the first time. Depleted uranium, Pax answered, her voice hollow. They're using radioactive projectiles. Our intelligence indicated they had abandoned such weapons centuries ago due to ethical concerns. But I watched in horror as 3 more tanks fired, and our dropship, our only way off this battlefield, collapsed into a smoking ruin. New plan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We break through their line to the northwest. Make for the forest and call for extraction from a secure location. We charged, using our gravity manipulators to leap over the first line of human defenses. For a moment, it seemed we might escape. Then, the air filled with a strange whirring sound. Drones! Pax shouted, pointing upward. Dozens of small flying machines appeared above us, each dropping what looked like metal cylinders. They detonated in midair, releasing not explosions, but electromagnetic pulses that fried our suit systems. My gravity manipulator failed mid-jump, sending me crashing to the ground. Around me, my troops fell like stones, suddenly weighted down by armor that no longer functioned. Our weapons sputtered, and died. The humans closed in, their expressions hidden behind reflective visors. Not the faces of primitives encountering superior beings, the faces of predators who had just successfully trapped their prey. They captured 17 of us alive that day, I tell the reporter, whose name I have now remembered as Nexa. The rest died on the field or in the following days from their wounds. "What happened to you and the other prisoners?" she asks, her voice hushed. "They studied us. Learned our weaknesses. Tested their weapons against our armor and defenses." I gesture to my prosthetic limb. This was courtesy of their humane treatment of prisoners of war. But our official history states that humans were technologically inferior, Nexa says, checking her notes. That we only lost the war because of their overwhelming numbers and willingness to sacrifice their own kind. I can't help but laugh, a harsh, broken sound. Your official history is garbage propaganda designed to save face. Yes, they were behind us in space travel and energy production. But in warfare, they were masters. What do you mean? Humans have been fighting each other since they crawled out of the mud. Their entire history is an unbroken chain of increasingly sophisticated ways to kill each other. While we were exploring the stars, they were perfecting the art of war. I lean forward, fixing her with my gaze. Do you know what they did, when they realized we were coming? When their primitive detection systems gave them just 3 days warning of our approach? She shakes her head. They adapted. In 72 hours, they retooled weapons factories, recalled retired military personnel, and prepared defensive strategies. Military leaders from nations that had been enemies for generations, suddenly collaborated, sharing technologies and tactics. But how could they possibly stand against our fleets? Our energy weapons? Our gravity technology? Because they'd been imagining this scenario for centuries. My voice rises despite my efforts to stay calm. They call it science fiction. An entire genre of entertainment dedicated to the idea of alien invasions. They had been mentally preparing for us long before we arrived. Nexa looks skeptical. Entertainment couldn't possibly prepare them for actual warfare. No. But it prepared their minds to accept the impossible. To think beyond conventional tactics. And their actual warfare experience did the rest. I pause, gathering my thoughts. What's the longest conflict in Federation history? Before Earth, the Centauri dispute. 11 cycles. 8 cycles, I correct her. Humans have been fighting continuously, somewhere on their planet, for thousands of years. Their weapons might have seemed primitive, but they were perfectly adapted to killing. And when they captured our technology, they didn't just use it. They improved it. Nexa's expression shifts from skepticism to unease. What do you mean, improved it? Our plasma rifles took 20 seconds to cool down between volleys. Within weeks of capturing our weapons, human engineers had reduced that to 5 seconds. Our gravity manipulators drained power cells after 30 minutes of use. They modified them, to run for hours. I pause, remembering the horror of seeing human soldiers using our own technology against us, but better, more efficiently, more lethally. But the worst part wasn't their technological adaptability. It was their psychological warfare. Psychological warfare. I nodded slowly. After my capture, I was interrogated by a human female. Small. Physically unimposing. She entered the room where I was restrained, placed a small device on the table between us, and smiled. The memory makes my skin crawl even now. The device projected images of my home world. My actual city. My neighborhood. She knew my family members by name, described the interior of my dwelling. Then she looked me in the eyes, and said, "Cooperation ensures their safety." They had that kind of intelligence about our worlds. Nexa sounds horrified. No. It was a bluff. A perfect, terrible bluff. I learned later, that they had extracted just enough information from our ship's databases to create convincing simulations. They couldn't possibly reach our home worlds with their technology. But in that moment, I believed them capable of anything. I take a deep breath, steadying myself. The next day, they took me to witness the interrogation of Admiral Brix himself, the mighty fleet commander who had promised us easy victory. I laugh, bitterly. They didn't even torture him. Just showed him videos of what had happened to our ground forces. Showed him how quickly they had reverse-engineered our technology. Then, they made him an offer. What kind of offer? Nexa leans forward, completely captivated now. The kind that ended the war. I meet her gaze steadily. But, that's not the story I'm here to tell. I'm here to warn the Federation about what happens next. Censors will have fun with that one. The humans didn't torture us in the conventional sense. No electrodes. No water immersion. None of that primitive nonsense. No. They did something far worse. They made us watch. Watch what exactly? Nexa's antenna straightened with curiosity. Their history. I pause, letting that sink in. Hour after hour, day after day, they showed us recordings of their wars. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Afghanistan. Thousands of years of conflict, meticulously documented. Not as propaganda, but as education. My prosthetic limb twitches involuntarily at the memory. On the 14th day of my captivity, my primary interrogator, a human male they called Captain Thorne, entered my cell. No guards. Just walked in, pulled up a chair, and sat down across from me. Completely unafraid. Weren't you restrained? Nexa asks. That's the point. I wasn't. I could have killed him with my bare hands. Snapped his fragile human neck without breaking a sweat. I flex my remaining organic hand, remembering. And he knew it too. But, he also knew I wouldn't. Why not? Because by then, I understood what we were dealing with. These weren't primitives encountering superior beings. These were apex predators, who had been fighting and killing each other for their entire existence. And now, they were unified against an external threat. Us. I leaned forward, elbows on knees. Captain Thorne brought a small device with him that day, placed it on the table between us, and activated it. A holographic display appeared. Crude by our standards, but effective. It showed the current state of the war. The memory floods back, vivid and terrible. Your invasion fleet consisted of 317 ships, Captain Thorne said, matter-of-factly. As of 0600 hours this morning. 212 have been destroyed or disabled. I stared at him in disbelief. Impossible. Your weapons can't penetrate our capital ship's shields. Thorne's face remained impassive. 3 weeks ago, that was true. The hologram shifted, showing footage that turned my blood cold. Human spacecraft, clearly cobbled together from a mixture of their own technology and ours, swarming around a Federation dreadnought. They weren't trying to breach the shields with brute force. Instead, they were targeting specific points, creating localized resonance patterns that collapsed sections of the shield matrix. How did you figure this out? I whispered. One of your shield technicians was very helpful, Thorne replied with a small shrug. Though, to be fair, we were already testing the theory. He just confirmed our approach and helped refine it. Traitor, I spat. Survivor, Thorne corrected. Like you could be. The hologram shifted again, showing ground battles across what I recognized as the continental landmass they called North America. Federation troops, in full retreat. Pursued by humans wearing modified versions of our own battle armor. Your gravity manipulators gave us some trouble at first, Thorne continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather. The power requirements were problematic. But then, one of our engineers had a breakthrough. The image zoomed in on a human soldier making an impossible leap, higher and farther than even our own troops could manage. What am I looking at? I asked, unable to hide my shock. We removed the safety limiters, Thorne said simply. Your engineers built in restrictions to prevent cellular damage from extended use. Our volunteers decided they could handle the strain. They'll die, I protested. The gravitational stress will tear their bodies apart within days. Thorne nodded. Some will. They know that. They volunteered anyway. That was the moment I truly understood humans. They weren't just willing to die for victory. They were willing to sacrifice their futures, their very health, for an immediate tactical advantage. What kind of species does that? Why are you showing me this? I finally asked. Because tomorrow, Admiral Brix will issue a general surrender order to all Federation forces, Thorne replied. And I want you to understand why that's the right call. Our reinforcements, I began. Won't arrive in time, he interrupted. We have already begun deploying our new fleet, reverse-engineered from your ships, but with certain improvements. The hologram showed human vessels under construction. Ugly, utilitarian things compared to our sleek Federation designs. But I could see the brutal efficiency in their layout. They'd stripped away everything non-essential, maximizing weapon capacity and shield strength. This is what humans do, Commander Taser, Thorne said, his voice quiet but intense. We adapt. We reverse engineer. We improve. And when threatened, we set aside our differences, and focus on survival. Your leaders thought our political divisions made us weak. In reality, they made us stronger. We've been testing strategies against each other for millennia, preparing for a threat exactly like yours. He stood up, deactivating the hologram. I will return tomorrow, after Admiral Brix's announcement. In the meantime, consider your options carefully. Cooperation ensures not just your survival, but the survival of countless Federation citizens. As he reached the door, I found my voice again. Captain Thorne, what improvements did you make to our shield technology? He paused, then looked back at me with an expression I now recognize as pity. We made them reciprocal. Meaning, they don't just block incoming attacks. They reflect them back at the source. He offered a small, humorless smile. Like I said, we improved things. The next day, as promised, Admiral Brix surrendered the invasion fleet, I tell Nexa, whose facial membranes have gone pale. The war was effectively over, though scattered fighting continued for another 2 cycles as the news spread through Federation space. But surely our technological advantage, she begins. Meant nothing, I cut her off. What good is a 1,000-year head start, when your opponent can close the gap in months? What good are superior weapons, when your enemy is willing to die, using inferior ones? What good are tactical computers, when facing an adversary whose entire cultural history has prepared them for this exact scenario? I gesture toward the viewport behind the interview stage, where the glittering spires of the Federation capital spread out below us. 5 cycles of peace have made us complacent. We tell ourselves that humans are satisfied with their treaty concessions. Their own system. Non-interference guarantees. Limited technology exchanges. Aren't they? Nexa asks. No. They are preparing. For what? For what comes next? I tap my prosthetic limb absently. You asked earlier why I'm speaking out now. It's because I received a message, last rotation cycle. From Captain Thorne. Nexa's eyes widen. After all this time. What did it say? Just 3 words. They voted yes. I don't understand. What does that mean? It means, their governing body, the United Earth Council, has approved the construction of their first true interstellar fleet. Not the cobbled-together ships they used to defeat us. New vessels, built from the ground up, incorporating everything they have learned. I let that sink in before continuing. But here's what truly terrifies me. According to my sources, they are not building warships. Then what are they building? Exploration vessels. Research ships. Cultural exchange craft. I laugh, the sound hollow, even to my own ears. They are coming out into the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as diplomats and scientists. But isn't that good news? Nexa looks genuinely confused. If they are pursuing peaceful expansion. You don't get it, I interrupt. Warfare isn't just about weapons and tactics. It's about strategy. Long-term thinking. The humans beat us, not because they were stronger or more advanced, but because they understood us, better than we understood them. And now, they are going to do the same thing, to the entire galactic community. What exactly are you suggesting, Commander? I'm suggesting, that humans have realized, conquest is inefficient. Why fight, when you can befriend? Why destroy, when you can trade? Why conquer, when you can integrate? Nexa's expression shifts, from confusion, to dawning horror. You think they are using our own playbook against us? Precisely. But, they will do it better. Because that's what humans do. They improve things. I shake my head. 5 cycles from now. Humans will have diplomatic and economic ties with half the known species in the galaxy. 10 cycles from now, their cultural influence will be inescapable. Their music. Their art. Their ideas, spreading across space. And their technology, always advancing, always improving, will become indispensable. That sounds like peaceful coexistence, not domination, Nexa argues. Does it? I counter. Ask yourself this, what happens, when a species becomes dependent on human technology? Human trade routes? Human entertainment? What happens, when human values, and human perspectives, begin to shape galactic discourse? It's conquest, without firing a shot. A memory surfaces. Something Captain Thorne said, during one of our later conversations, after the peace treaty was signed, as I was preparing to return to Federation space. You know what's funny about all this? Thorne said, escorting me to the transport shuttle. If you'd just contacted us peacefully from the beginning, we would have welcomed you with open arms. I find that hard to believe, I replied bitterly. It's true. Humans have been dreaming about meeting alien life, for centuries. Most of our science fiction wasn't about war. It was about cooperation. Exchange. Friendship, across the stars. He shrugged. But, you came as conquerors. So, we responded in kind. And now we do it our way. His expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Taser. I'm sorry about your arm. War brings out the worst in everyone, even humans. What will you do now that the fighting is over? I asked, genuinely curious. Me personally. I'm joining the diplomatic corps. Turns out. I have a knack for understanding alien psychology. He smiled, a human expression I'd learned to read. But humanity as a whole, we are going to explore. Learn. Connect. And make damn sure, nobody ever threatens our planet again. By becoming indispensable, I realized aloud. Thorne nodded. The best defense, isn't a strong military. It's making sure nobody wants to attack you, in the first place. Creating a scenario, where harming you, would harm them, just as much. As I boarded the shuttle, Thorne called out one last thing. See you among the stars, Commander. Next time, let's meet as friends. Captain Thorne kept his promise, I tell Nexa, returning to the present. He's now Ambassador Thorne. Humanity's chief diplomatic representative to the Galactic Federation. Charming fellow. Everyone loves him. I have met him, Nexa admits, looking unsettled. He does have a certain charisma. Of course he does. That's their weapon now. I lean back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. The humans have a saying. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. They have taken that to heart. What would you have us do, Commander? Reject their diplomatic overtures? Refuse their trade agreements? Isolate ourselves? No. It's far too late for that. The integration has already begun. I gesture toward the holographic advertisements, visible through the studio window. Human entertainment. Human fashion. Human ideas, already spreading through Federation society. All I'm suggesting is that we approach this relationship with our eyes open. That we recognize what we are dealing with. And what exactly are we dealing with, in your opinion? I consider the question carefully. A species that survived its own worst instincts. That turned thousands of years of conflict into a crucible for innovation and adaptation. That faced extinction, at its own hands, countless times, and always found a way forward. I pause, gathering my thoughts. Humans aren't inherently better than us. They are not smarter. Or stronger. Or more advanced. But, they are more tested. More proven. They have faced challenges we can barely imagine, and emerged stronger for it. And now, they are bringing that resilience, that adaptability, that relentless drive to improve, into the galactic community. You make them sound almost admirable, Nexa observes. They are. That's what makes them so dangerous. Or, so valuable. Depending on your perspective. And what's your perspective, Commander Taser? After everything you have been through, everything you have seen, do you fear humans? Or admire them? The question hangs in the air between us. Outside the studio, life in the Federation capital continues. Citizens going about their business, unaware of how quickly their world is changing. How thoroughly human influence is already spreading through their society. Both, I finally answer. I fear what they could become, if threatened again. I admire what they might help us become, if we are wise enough to learn from them, rather than compete with them. That's not the warning I expected, Nexa admits. The real warning isn't about humans, I tell her. It's about us. About our arrogance. We thought they were primitive, because their technology wasn't as advanced as ours. We never bothered to understand their history. Their psychology. Their potential. I stand up, signaling the interview is over. Tell your viewers this. Humans aren't the enemy anymore. Our own ignorance is. Our own complacency. Our own failure of imagination. I lock eyes with her. We thought they were primitive. We were wrong. And if we make the same mistake again, if we underestimate them, or provoke them, the consequences will be far worse than a failed invasion. What would those consequences be? Nexa asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Irrelevance, I reply simply. In their quest to secure their place in the galaxy, humans won't destroy us. They will simply outpace us. Outthink us. Out-innovate us. Until one day, we wake up, and realize we are not the dominant force in galactic politics anymore. They are. As I walk off the stage, away from the lights, and the cameras, and Nexa's troubled expression. I can't help but think of my last conversation, with Ambassador Thorne, just one rotation cycle ago. Why send me that message? I had asked him. Why tell me about the fleet vote? His response haunts me still. Because you are one of the few who truly understands us, Taser. And the galaxy needs people like you. People who can see beyond the present moment. Who recognize the patterns of history. The Federation needs to be ready. Ready for what? For partnership, he said, his expression earnest. Equal. Genuine partnership. Because if there's one thing human history has taught us, it's that unequal relationships always end badly. Always. In that. I believed him. That's what terrifies me most of all. I genuinely believed him. As I exit the studio, into the bright light of the Federation capital, I look up at the sky. At the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships are venturing forth. Human diplomats are making connections. Human ideas are spreading. And all I can think is, we thought they were primitive. What else might we be wrong about? The galaxy's about to find out.